Greetings, everybody. I kind of had a random inspiration for a video. Normally I talk about a specific car, but in this case I'm going to talk about a few different things. One is, as the title of the video says, the bond between man and car, but I'm also going to go into some of my experiences with cars, things that have shaped my love for cars, and just some of the different things that that have come into play throughout the years. So the first thing I want to talk about is man's bond with cars, and I mean this in that has a few different meanings. So like for me, I've always been obsessed with cars as long as I can remember. And as many cars as I go through, I still get attached to them to one degree or another. And the car almost becomes kind of like a friend. Yes, of course, I realize they're inanimate objects, but it's something you connect to in a way. You know, the car becomes a vessel for your travel, and just the act of maybe working on the car, maintaining the car, and whatever, that kind of thing increases the bond to me. And it doesn't even have to, you don't even have to work on the car to have that bond with it. But it's like, it's almost like it's a buddy. I have a car friend. He's used that word to describe his cars. Like, the car's like, where you want to go? Okay, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. And I thought that was kind of cool that he put it that way. But there's a lot of emotional satisfaction that comes from a car, for me, and I'm sure a lot of people in general. I can bump my speed up here because the speed limit's a little higher. And so, you know, when I'm driving, I do drive a lot. I used to drive a lot more for work, but I do now my driving is just for pleasure mainly. And it just kind of transports me to a different world. It's like my Zen place. And, you know, while I'm driving, I feel the connection to the car. I feel everything the car is doing, and I can hear it and whatever. It's just like I'm communicating with the car, or more like the car is communicating with me. You know, a different way of looking at it is it just like becomes an extension of oneself. Now, even without driving, sometimes I like to just go sit in the car in the garage, and that's also part of the bond. It's just like taking in the ambiance, almost like getting to sort of a meditative state. Driving or not, I mean, there's different types of meditation, and just simply being relaxed and enjoying the drive is kind of a type of meditation. Now, I also wanted to talk about some of the more specific events for me. When I was a little boy, I used to have a fascination with speedometers, and I would draw speedometers all the time and draw cars. You know, they were in the childhood style of drawing, not very good. I'm not even sure if I still have any of those. I do have some stuff from my childhood. But when I was very little, my dad would sit in the driver's seat and let me sit in front of him and drive a little bit on this one back dirt road that nobody ever used. It wasn't very far. It was like maybe 1/10 of a mile, but to me that might as well have been 100 miles. And we were going like 10 miles an hour, and I know he had his hands ready to grab the steering wheel and his foot ready to stop on the brake. But I think that is the earliest, and that kind of really gave me that first sense of freedom and joy from driving a car. I just love these left lane hogs, especially when they're not quite, oh, well, at least they got over. That's good. So anyway, you know, that happened. I must have been 6 or 7 years old or something like that. Not even sure. Oh, now they're speeding up. So let me bump it up just a little bit here to get past them. I hate people who don't know how fast they want to go on the highway. I always set my cruise control, so I'm not that person that goes 70 and then 80 and then 60. Whatever. Anyway, so the next thing that really played a big role for me, and was an extremely memorable experience, was I must have been 11 or 12, because we were in the first house that I lived in, and we moved out of there after my 6th grade year. My parents were at a block party, and they were drinking, and I took that opportunity to say, hey, can I have the car keys and drive around the block? And because of the alcohol, of course, they thought that sounded like a perfectly fine idea and gave me the keys. And thus began my first drive on my own. So there were a few things that I had been told that I didn't fully understand. Like, my dad had told me that in low gear, you know, that's back when the transmissions had like the L on them for first gear, three-speed transmission. The particular car was one my mom had purchased when it was a demo, maybe, or maybe 1 year old. It was a 1973 Oldsmobile Omega, 2-door. I believe it was a hatchback, 350 rocket engine. And man, if I could find another one just like it, I would be all over that. But so I hopped in, started up the car, started driving. On our little neighborhood had just one little road that went through it, but then it looped around and connected to a main road. So then I hopped out on that main road, and in low gear, floored it, got it up to 50 miles an hour in first gear, not realizing a few things. First of all, that began the process of breaking the transmission, but I don't know if that necessarily killed it. My parents were not very good at maintaining cars. In fact, in later years, I ended up doing all the maintenance on their cars because they just never did. And it's funny, on that particular car, I had several recurring dreams of having to like revive it and get gunky coolant out of the radiator and stuff like that. But anyway, so I'm driving down this road. I get it up to 50 miles an hour, and then the reality hits me. Wow, for a little boy who has never driven before, handling a car that's hurtling down the road at 50 miles an hour around a turn is a rather challenging experience. So I think I almost ran the car into the guardrail because I really didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, I was able to get it under control and get it back. But holy cow, that was a very memorable ride, my first drive. And, you know, that again further cemented my love for cars. And then I think, you know, those of you who have watched some of my videos know I have a lot of diesel cars, Mercedes-Benz in particular, case in point, the one I'm driving now. There's one particular event in my life that I think really made Mercedes-Benz's click with me. Back in 1983, my brother-in-law had just purchased a brand new 300D turbo diesel, and it was this really cool, it was called green, but it didn't really look green. It was very pale, almost yellow. Still don't know the name of the color. Side note, I had a chance to buy that car from him many years later and stupidly did not because I was trying to get it for too cheap. But that was probably the most impactful car ever in my life. I was sitting in the back and I didn't really understand the whole diesel engine thing, so I watched him start it, and he turned the key on and waited for a little bit and then fired it up. I may or may not have asked him at that time how that was working, or maybe he told me, I don't know. Then I learned the concept of a glow plug. But then that thing fired to life. It had that glorious diesel clatter sound, and then he took us for a ride in it. And the car, the way the car handled was just a marvel. I could even tell from the back seat. He took us on some winding country roads. This was in Maryland. And just like, there was this one spot where there was like kind of a big dip in the road, which would make a lot of cars bottom out maybe. But the Mercedes just handled it with a plume. And I was hooked. That's really what got me completely hooked on Mercedes-Benzes and diesels in particular. And I had just, you know, I basically, there was a point where I had actually cut, what do you call it, a brochure for a car, a Mercedes, cut it up into pictures and taped it on my wall. And it was sort of, I didn't even know it was a vision board at the time, but it was sort of my vision board. And it was a case of someday I'm going to own one of these. The one in particular that I lusted after the most was the W140S class. Now the vision board came years after the experience of that, but the desire was always there. So that was another very impactful thing. And then it's funny, I was also obsessed with Volkswagen Beetles when I was in college, and I'm not really sure what got me hooked on those. It may have been another teenager experience when I went for a ride in the back of one of those. One of my cousins owned one or something like that. But it's kind of a very vague memory. But yeah, I had a few of those in college. But then when I turned 16, I could not wait to get my license. And funny enough, I failed the driver's test to no fault of my own 2 times, and you were only allowed to take it 3 times before you had to wait 6 months. The first time, my mom was test driving a car, and obviously as a test drive, she did not have the registration for the car. Yay, another left lane driver. So it was an immediate fail. And then the second time, the car had a light out, and that was an immediate fail. The third time, everything was in order with the car, but I actually bumped the pole when I was doing the parallel parking thing, and because they knew it was like my 3rd time, they just let me pass, which was really nice. So I got my license. But right off the bat, I would just hop in the car and drive. I'd just pick a road and drive, At the time, a 45-minute to 1-hour drive was a pretty big deal. But that I would just do that, get in the car as a 16-year-old and just drive. My first car was a 1981 Mercury Lynx, and oh my god, that was a piece of junk. It was only at the time like 5 or 6 years old with 50,000 miles on it. My parents bought it for me, and it did all kinds of bad things. Like when you tried to put it in first, sometimes it would go to reverse. Whenever it would rain, the car would stall, and you sometimes could, sometimes couldn't get it started again. And anyway, the suspension on those cars was absolutely horrible. I was out on some random drive and took a 25 mile per hour turn at maybe 30, maybe 35. You know, the car should be able to handle that right, and lost control and flew into a tree. Thank goodness I knew about seat belts, because I think that could have ended differently if I hadn't had my seat belt on. I came out of that with absolutely no injuries, but it was weird. My eyeglasses that I had on at the time ended up in 3 different pieces. Each lens popped out, and the frame I think ended up all the way in the back hatch. This is just to give you an idea of the force of the accident, basically hitting the tree in midair. One of the lenses was all the way up under the passenger front footwell, and the other was all the way up under the driver's front footwell. Crazy. Yeah, that didn't deter me though. I mean, that was something I learned how to drive within the limits of whatever the car was. And it's a good thing too, because after that I started driving Volkswagen Beetles, which I'm sure would handle worse than that in the same situation. But yeah, that's just another experience. You know, just so many of my memories in life are around cars and experiences I've had in cars. And I mean, I could obviously go on and on and on, but I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to a close and just tie it all back together to, you know, I had a bond with all of these cars to one degree or another. And, you know, a lot of the things that kind of shaped my life experiences revolved around cars. Let me know if you're interested in this sort of video. Drop a comment in there. I could actually continue some of my car stories if anybody's interested. This, you know, I make the videos mainly for me, and you know, I always find it kind of fascinating that there's people out there that actually like to hear what I have to say, because I tend to ramble. But thank you to those of you who are interested in what I have to say and who watch my videos. I do like talking about this stuff. All right, have a great day, everyone.